T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. All three engines up and burning. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
Coach on Fire Radio.
Are you there?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Money Rockstars. I am your host, Michelle Cooper, and I am very, very excited to welcome my guest tonight, Marlo Ellis. Welcome, Marlo.
Hi, thank you, Michelle. It's so awesome to be here, trains and all.
I know, right? Just as we were about to go live, a giant train pulled up alongside my office. So
it's perfect.
It was
divine
perfect,
timing.
Right?
Absolutely.
So, Marlo, tell us a little bit about you and the Uncommon Woman movement.
Okay. So a little bit about myself is that I spent 10 years as a high school teacher. So that was from 2000 to 2000 and I guess 2001 to 2011. I was a high school teacher and I absolutely loved teaching, and I really loved, of course, the transformation part of teaching. So watching the kids kind of transform over a semester or over the year was always really amazing. But while I was teaching, I got really interested. I've been really active in fitness for 28 years now, I guess. But at the time, had been really involved in fitness for many, many years, and I wanted to compete for my 40th birthday. I actually wanted to celebrate by getting up on a fitness stage, and so I whipped myself into shape over a period of about 4 months, and I managed to hit the competitive stage when I was living in Mexico. I was teaching internationally at the time at an American school, and I hit the stage and I took first place, and then I just kind of decided that I wanted to continue to transform my body and to, kind of push new limits and hit new goals. But then while I was doing that, a lot of women would approach me and ask me if I would help them with their own personal transformation. And so at first I would say to them, well, I don't really have any kind of a certification. I just know what I did with my trainer. And they would say to me, well, show us. I'm really interested. I just want to lose some weight. I just want to get strong. So I started actually training women at the school gym. They had a really beautiful gym at the school. And I would train women after my workout in the evenings. And eventually I started charging them because it was taking up some of my time. And I would charge like $30 or $40 a session. And then I started offering boot camps and packages and all kinds of stuff. And I opened this little tiny fitness studio in the top floor of my house. And I had this huge, massive house that the school had rented basically out for me, but I was in it all by myself. And so I turned this beautiful space into like a small fitness studio and a yoga studio, and I had yoga instructors come in and run classes. So I came home in 2011 after teaching internationally, and I continued to build my fitness career and help women transform their bodies. But over a period of time, I fell in love with the man whose studio I was working in. And at first everything was great, and we were the fitness couple, and we were building this incredible business together. But about 3 or 4 months into the relationship, probably even sooner than that actually, I think I started seeing signs pretty early on. But about 3 or 4 months into the relationship, it got really toxic. It got really emotionally abusive. He started having lots of affairs and, saying things to me like, if you ever leave me, I'll kill you. And it just got really kind of crazy. And I didn't even at the time understand what was going on. And about a year and a half later, after all kinds of stuff transpired, I decided that I needed to leave just to save my own life and save my own sanity. So I built a fitness studio, and I kind of did it under his nose without him knowing, and opened that fitness studio in 2012, November of 2012. And in 2015, I closed that fitness studio, that same studio, to do the work I'm doing today. And so bottom line is that through that, over those, I guess that period of really 11 years or 12 years, I became really passionate about helping people transform. But the closer I got to people, the more I saw them transform, the more I also recognized that the transformation actually really had to happen from within. Right. So the Uncommon Woman movement came from me recognizing that my own personal transformation had to happen outside of my own fitness studio. I actually needed to work on my own personal healing to figure out what the story was behind the toxic relationship, why I was even there in the first place, why I let it go on so long, all of that kind of stuff. So the Uncommon Woman movement is connected to this because I felt very isolated and alone in that time. It was back in 2011 and 2012 when social media wasn't what it is today. People didn't really talk about their abuse openly. And I was also really scared because he had told me if I ever left that he would kill me. So I stayed silent.
Right.
And then eventually I told my parents that what he had said, because I was actually worried that it would happen. And I said to them, you need to know that he said this to me in case anything ever happened, God forbid. And I told my girlfriend, Jackie, who was one of my number one supporters through this. And so when I got out of it, and I came out of it pretty much unscathed, I obviously had a lot of healing to do, but I promised God and Source that if I came out of that okay, that I would create a space, a movement that would give women who were like me a safe place to land and to talk and to share their struggles. And that's truly the foundation of the Uncommon Woman and why it exists. It was kind of like a gift to the gods, basically, for what I had been through. And I really wanted to be able to help other women because I know not everybody comes out quite as lucky as I did. And I want to be able to help women through that process of healing. And so that's how the Uncommon Women movement was born, really. That's the short version. And I know that wasn't that short.
And so it's not just a place for women who have abuse stories.
Oh, gosh, no. No. I mean, there are women in the Uncommon Woman movement who have had their children murdered, have had their children die by suicide, have had spouses die by suicide, have lost careers, lost families, lost people to divorce, right? Aging parents who die. I mean, it's really a space where it's interesting. I was thinking the other day, the Uncommon Woman movement is actually foundation, or a movement that's the foundation of this movement is built from people's pain.
Right.
And I thought, man, this can be really depressing, right? But the reality is that we all experience pain. It is impossible to avoid pain. There are two things that we're guaranteed in life. One is that we experience pain at some point in our lives, and the other is that we die. And in between there's joy and bliss and all of that, right? But not everybody's guaranteed pure joy. Not everybody is guaranteed pure, whole love in their lives. But we're all guaranteed pain. And so it's something that we all have in common. And I feel like when we can come together and say, oh my God, we're still here, like high five to the fact that we're still hanging around after all of this, that's actually something to celebrate. And so the Uncommon Woman movement is actually a celebration of that exact thing.
Right. And like I always say, when you share your story, when you let down the wall and you allow yourself to be vulnerable, there will be people out there that connect with you and your story, and you will help them without even knowing that you're helping.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Absolutely. I have been sitting with people at a wedding, for example, right? And they'll say, hey, what do you do? And I'll just say, oh, I work with women. I'm a leadership coach and transformational speaker. And they'll say, oh, what do you mean? Like, what kind of stuff do you work with women? And I'll tell them. And then like the next day I'll get a text message from them or a Facebook follow. And they'll say, our conversation last night made me realize that I have so much unhealed pain that I need to work on. Thank you so much. Right? So we never know who we're sitting beside. We never know who we're connecting with or who's following us on Facebook or following us on Instagram and watching us from the sidelines going, one day I'll step forward and be courageous enough to share or to just reach out and say, I need help.
Totally. And so, often women coming through these kind of stories, especially stories of abuse, a lot of women in abusive relationships, the money factor is the thing that they just can't get over. It took me 3 years. When that relationship ended, I had to walk away from my house that I had just bought. I had to walk away from all of the money that I invested in the gym that became our space at the time. It was his, but when we were together, we built it as ours, right? I had to walk away from all of just everything. I had all of the clients that I had that were there.
I had to go up to them and tell them that I was leaving, and many of them stayed because they just didn't feel like moving gyms, basically. And a lot of them, obviously, or most of them, didn't know what was going on because I wasn't somebody to tell everybody what was going on, but they certainly knew that there was discord between us, right? And so a lot of my clients that I had worked really hard to bring in stayed. So I took a massive financial hit, and it took me so long to recover. I lived in the basement, actually, of my gym, and I rented out my house for the first year. And it was an old character home that I put my gym in. And so the basement was, one of those old character home basements, right? Low ceilings, rock walls that were always damp, cobwebs, pipes running everywhere. I remember my mom saying to me after I left there and I moved back into my home after my first year of business, she said to me, I never could come down there because it broke my heart to see you living that way. Like I was truly bottoming out, and I was also drinking a lot at the time because I was completely depressed, and it was a physically dark space, and it was an emotionally dark time in my life.
Right. And, that's the thing, right? You can get caught in the dark space, and finding your way out, it feels like it's a mountain so big that you can't get over.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So what would be your little piece of advice? I know it's really hard to shrink it down into one bite-sized piece, but do you have any advice for people who are like, I'm caught in this situation and I can't see a way out?
Yeah, I think the first thing would be to take away that dialogue, to literally flip that dialogue over so I can see a way out. Mm-hmm. Right?
Right.
It's really the power of words. And they might not believe it at the outset. And you don't have to believe it because you're probably not going to at the outset. I mean, I remember it was actually, I read Awaken the Giant Within, I think is by Tony Robbins. And there was this part in that book that just has always stuck with me. And this is kind of where I started using the language flipping words. And he talks about how you would take a word like fear and turn it into curiosity, right? Or you would take a word like anger and you would turn it into something like wonder, right? And so I remember when I was going through the process of releasing the obviously crappy story that was holding me back from getting anywhere, because the longer I stood around and thought I'm never going to get anywhere, the longer I didn't get anywhere. And in my nature, I've always been driven. I've always been exciting and excitable. I've always loved my life. I've always had lots of ideas, and I've always been very positive. And it was such a scary time in my life because I actually truly for quite a while didn't believe that there was anywhere else I could go. So I started just saying it. I started just saying it. Yeah. I just used words. Yeah, that was it. And then, as you and I both know, that changes the body chemistry, right? And I started believing it after a while. And then, of course, I also was surrounded by incredible people. Once I left and I started sharing, I just had a flock of amazing humans around me to hold me up in that time. So those two things I think were both really important factors. Changing my language and surrounding myself.
Good. It's one decision away.
Absolutely.
Right. Everything is one decision away.
Yeah.
So I love that. So, okay, let's get real here.
Okay.
What money stuff came up for you? What was really going on? Like, was there avoidance? Was there shame, guilt? What was going on?
Okay, just to be specific, what point are you talking about? After I had left and I was in the basement?
Yeah.
What was going on? Well, I mean, obviously one of the things was just I was terrified that I would never be able to get on my feet again. I couldn't get over the idea of not ever getting out of that basement, right?
Right.
And so what did I do? I worked harder. I ran my fitness studio on my own. I opened at 6 a.m. and I closed at 8, and I was open 6 days a week. And I just started coming up with ways that I could make more money. Like I would literally sit there and come up with boot camps, right? Because group programs, fast money, right? So I would plan boot camps and I would say, okay, I can get 20 women in at $300 a woman for a month. That's, $6,000, right? Like that was the kind of math I started doing. And I had to dig myself out of debt. I owed everybody money because I had borrowed money to pay my bills when I left the house. you know, and I had all kinds of debt that I had to pay off. And so I was still kind of getting out of that. And then eventually